Okay, so today the lesson will be a bit shorter than usual because I have to leave around 10:30 because I have another engagement here in the faculty. So, but I want to remind you about tomorrow and the lecture that will be held by Francesca Spagnoli about the Living Labs, let's say a model of open innovation. You know what this means. You know open innovation means for boosting innovation and also social innovation, not only technological one. And this will be an interesting lecture that comes in the framework of the digital entrepreneurship lectures and in the framework of the Prometheus project. Some of you asked me, again, sorry, tomorrow the lecture will start. This is important. Will start at 9:15 sharp. Okay, so I will come here around 9. And I will set up all the things of the connection. I still don't know if Dr. Spagnoli will be here in presence or connection because she got sick in the last days, but she recovered. So, but she still doesn't know if she is able to come or not. We will discover this tomorrow. And again, tomorrow at 9:15 sharp here we will start. And I invite you anyway to come here because today I have only 3 persons in front of me, and hopefully someone else will join us later. But there is really few people in the room, and considering also that if everything goes well, in a couple of weeks, we will go on less than a couple of weeks, 10 days. We will go in full presence here, so 100%. So you can come without any restriction. Oh, but the restriction is the capacity of the room. But we have plenty of places here that we can basically we can fit all the people that is online right now, because in the room there are almost 30 places. Okay, so the meeting will be tomorrow at 9:15 here. Then we go ahead with our course. So I'm going to share and record the lesson for today, because there are some of your colleagues that are that have an overlap of lessons. So okay, the recording is started. Another thing I have uploaded on the page and the, let's say, the shared area, the information, a sample of a project work, a research paper. So you can find a folder with the title project work, And inside this, you can find some information about the way how to do the project work, in particular the research paper. As soon as I will find something useful for the business case, I will already upload this. Then let's go back to the mantra, and we go to the second module. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So the mind that what we are saying here is really useful, and what we are seeing here are the guidelines also for writing your project work, in particular in relation to the data management. Okay, so the aim of this unit is to let's say make a systemic overview of concepts that many of you already know. Okay, but this is something for also making some order across the ideas. Okay, so with this section we will help to think how you have to collect, store, and share your research data that have a value. We know that data have a value according to certain situations. And the aim of this unit is to understand which are the basic principles of research data management, which is the key role of data management in carrying out, say, responsible research. Think about also the research as not a one-shot activity, to your project, not just a one-shot activity, but an activities that can be reused for other purposes from other persons. So you have to put in place all the measures that allow a proper reusage of your data and your research. Again, as we said last time, you should also know about the data management plan requirements that comes from the funding bodies, such as the European Commission or your organization itself, and so on. And then know something about the data management planning tools, support and guidance that are available for academic researchers. And finally, be able to use the information to develop this knowledge for developing a data and a software management plan that is a part, that will be part, a required part of your project work. In every activity, being this activity a research-oriented activity or a business-oriented activity, it is required to put as an annex of the document that you produce a data management plan that explains the way how you gather, store, share, manage your data. Can you see the video? Okay. So an activity, read the scenario below. and the questions which follow. What do you think you might do in such case? And record your thoughts and review them after you have completed this unit. Okay, so try to do this in 5 minutes. Okay. You have completed your postgraduate study with flying colors and published a couple of papers to disseminate your research results. Your papers have been cited widely in research literature by others who have built upon your findings. Okay. However, 3 years later, another researcher has accused you of having falsifying the data, the research. Do you think you would be able to prove that you had done the work as described? If so, how? What would you need to prove that you haven't falsified the data? What should you have done through your research study to be able to prove now that you had done the work as described? 3 years are a long time. Personally, I forget things that I've done 15 days before. I erase completely. But this is my problem. So I have to keep the record of everything I do. The agenda, whatever. Okay. Otherwise, I'm not able to report activities because I forget. And think about more complicated things, such as research. So the methodology of data collection, the way how you gather data, and so on, after 3 years. How do you keep record of this? And we are capable to demonstrate. In the meantime, while you are thinking to the questions, another video.
So a data management plan is basically a blueprint for what you're going to do with that data throughout the life cycle, so throughout your research project. And you may not have thought of everything, but at least by planning, you can avoid major pitfalls of data loss. And you can predict what you need to do in order to share the data at the end if that's what's needed. So for example, you can get the right kind of forms of consent from the data subjects, and you can get the costs upfront for the services that you need, and put that into the so that the funders will pay it, and you won't be stuck without the services that you need. So the data management plan ideally is a living document that you start when you have your research proposal. And it will change over time, and the research data support team can help you make those adjustments as you go.
I don't know what's happening.
There's a problem to get it. It will change over time, and the research data support team can help you make those adjustments as you go.
Yeah, so for me, the emergence of more attention to data management and the creation of data and tools like DFO are really useful. Now that there's much more attention to data management, having a tool like DFO online, which is really a series of prompts to get you to think through as a researcher, to think through different aspects of it and do it. I think it's really useful to have that structure. All the enjoy your attention to things like thinking about that. Where are you going to see? Who will have access to it? During the research, after the research, so I think it's really interesting. How do we fix it? Digital travel, thinking through where they
there is a website where you can actually go there and just understand how to organize the data management plan, which is data management by Oracle. So I used that platform to create mine, and it was quite helpful because at the beginning you don't know how to write it, you know, like the structure and everything. So actually I used that website and I integrated that all the questions that they exist. And yeah, basically I just find that based on that. So I was working on building up my data management plan. At the beginning I had like plenty of doubts and questions, so I contacted them by email. And they would just respond very quickly and very nicely, so it was really, really good support. So actually I sent my data management plan, they reviewed them, and sent me some comments and feedback. So, you know, the communication was so fluent with that all the time, so I really appreciate it. So there's a number of ways that research-based support team can help researchers in writing data management plans. First of all, we have an online training module in our manager training course,
This one.
and you can just go and take that, please. We also have advice on our website and a library of sample plans. So you can find something close to your discipline, or close to your project size that would make a good sample. The Digital Curation Center provides an online tool called DMP Online. And we managed to customize that in University of Edinburgh. So if you're responding to a data management requirement in a particular project, you can pull up those instructions, and then you can get guidance on kinds of University of Edinburgh services that are available, so you can do some kind of basic about certain kind of text in the plan. We also have experts at knowing what the funding requirements are, and who helped other people. So you could sit down with them or iterate the plan online, back and forth by email. We have people who will put the time in to find out about your requirements and help you write it in and get it right. So you know, when that part.
Okay. So, important thing, you may think that this is something important for people that is working with our science, like people working at CERN in Geneva, like we have seen last time. But this is not true. As you have seen here, also, there are people coming from social sciences. Even that they do, let's say, more qualitative research rather than quantitative. Anyway, the data management plan, the data management is always important to keep and consolidate the foundation of the work you have done. Okay, and there are, they say that there are tools also for doing that. Which are the benefits? Again, meeting the funding body grant requirements, reinforcing research integrity and reproducibility, increasing the efficiency of the work that you are doing, ensuring that the research data and records are accurate, complete, authentic, and reliable, saving time and resources in the long run, enhance data security, and by minimizing also the risk of data loss. efficiency also in terms of avoiding the duplication of efforts, with the possibility of reusing data. No? And then finally, but still important, the compliance with practices of industry and commerce. So copyrights, patents, and so on. So there is a life cycle that starts from the creation of data. So before collecting data, think about the way how the data will be collected. Yeah. So which type of data you are going to generate, how much data you will be collected, what other formats will be used. Okay. Data are important, but also important is the meta information that accompany data, that helps to explain data. Because while I'm working on a data set, and this is something that I'm doing now, of course, I know more or less what I'm doing and which data I'm managing. Okay, but if I pass the same data set to someone else without any explanation, any documentation about the data, probably this will be unuseful. But if I go back on the same data after 3 years without any documentation, for the reason of the accuse of the plagiarism or whatever, probably I will not remember anymore exactly how the data are structured. So I will need anyway a kind of documentation, even though I was the one that have generated this data. Okay. Then, in order to use properly the data, how do we want to organize the data and the structure of the files, for example? During this is a matter of quality of work. When you start a project, either if you work in the research field, but also in the consultancy or whatever, you will have to follow guidelines that are also quality guidelines. Many companies that are certified for 9001 and connected ISO standards receive and maintain this certification also because they have a quality plan that includes also the document and data management. So when you save a file, and we'll see how this happens. For example, you have to name it in a format that is predefined, that follows certain criteria, that is understandable for anyone that is working in the organization. The same for the structure of the folders and subfolders, and so on. So you have to think first to the way how you want to structure the file, the data, the documentation, in order to make this understandable for anyone that now or later on will interact with your project. Then how you manage the access and the permission for working collaboratively. Then there is a need to store the data. And okay, how you store the data, but how, for example, you are capable to distinguish and protect sensitive data. Do you know which is the difference, for example, between personal data and sensitive data? Also, the people are online. Personal and sensitive data.
Sensitive data can be like confidential, you know, the one took by the HR department, they say, or is confidential information not to be shared by other people?
The confidentiality is a consequence of the sensitivity. No.
Maybe my idea is that personal data is more based on us to decide if it's sensitive or not, but the sensitive data more about laws and the regulations, maybe.
No. Personal data are, generally speaking, the data that refers to the personal sphere of the individual. Okay? Age, gender, place of birth, personal address, and so on. Within the category of the personal data, there is a subset of personal data that are considered sensitive, that refers to the private sphere of the individual, that cannot be disclosed or can be disclosed under certain rules and certain levels of permission. For example, the health record, the religious choices, the political ones, the sex preferences, and so on. These are sensitive data. If we move for the individual sphere to the company sphere, personal data are, let's say, the information about the company, I mean, the address, say, what is, generally speaking, the public information that all the company have to share for a matter of transparency. While sensitive data inside the company are, for example, the data related to copyrights, patents, in IPRs in general, or for example, budget plans for the companies that are listed in the stock markets. If you disclose a budget plan stall a budget plan before the official announcement of a company listed in the stock market, this is an infringement of the law. Okay, it's clear the difference between personal and sensitive data. Of course, if you want to go in depth, and we'll touch this point a bit later on this concept, you have to pick the EU GDPR regulation. That is a directive that is applied more or less in all the member states. That gives you the rules, the guidelines, for distinguishing between personal and sensitive data, and also set the rules for managing, which are the level of security that have to be assigned to different kind of data. Sharing data, again, with open innovation approach, especially with open innovation approach that we already discussed, we have to share data. We have to share data, and so we have to make this possible in a more transparent way. Okay, and then we have to know which data we can share, because they are sensitive, they are private, and so on. Which factors may drive to a restriction in the data sharing, no? And so on, and where physically share the data. And then preserve. So how we will ensure that the data will remain accessible and usable in the long term is not just a matter of file format, but it can be. It could be also a matter of physical support. When I started to work at the university a long time ago, I started to work with floppy disks. So my research data, my thesis, my master thesis was on a floppy disk. Who still has a floppy disk reader driver? Nobody, I think. Okay, so data have to be maintained and preserved also according to the evolution of technology. Both the physical technologies and both the software technologies. Because, for example, when I graduated, Excel was not there. There were other spreadsheets with other file formats. That basically are not readable anymore. I have my old professor that is still working and still has, let's say, virtual machines that replicate the computing environment of 30 years ago with all that software installed, including the floppy disk drive. Because it still preserves its work that comes from 30, 40 years ago. In this way, having a full, let's say, working system in the way that we were using 30 years ago.
Data management is a crucial part of any research project. This involves collecting, storing, using, sharing, preserving research data in an effective and productive way. No matter the subject of your study, the level of your experience, or where you are in the research process, the University of Edinburgh Research Data Service is here to help you. We provide the tools and support that help staff and students manage their research data before, during, and after their project. If you are unfamiliar with fundamentals of research data management and sharing, we offer a range of free online, scheduled and bespoke training for individuals and groups. Before you begin your project, you can use a free online tool to create a data management plan by our funders, outlining how you intend to manage your research data throughout the project. You can also book a personal consultation with one of our staff to discuss your plan and get expert advice. This is especially useful if you're working with personal or sensitive data. If you need to access existing data from the Research Data Service team can help you find and access a comprehensive range of data sets. Once you have your data, we offer a range of tools that will help you store, manage, and allow safe access. All university researchers are given a free quota of network storage space with add-on options for data-intensive projects. There is a tool for syncing your data and collaborating with external colleagues. We also have secure facility for working with highly sensitive data. Whether you're working in a lab environment, creating software code, or collaborating with external parties, we have the resources to help you. Once your research is complete, it's time to preserve your data for future use. Our tools enable you to securely retain your research data for the long term, ensuring compliance with conduct, journal, and university requirements. You can choose to license and share your data with other researchers by using our trusted open access repository, and our team is on hand to provide advice on quality assurance during this process. Or you can select private long-term retention, with only you and your nominated colleagues able to access the data. Effective data management has many benefits. We offer comprehensive support that complies with best practice and funding requirements. Whatever your data management needs, get in touch with the Research Data Service at the University of Edinburgh and find out how we can help you.
Okay. So, what is a data management plan? Again, and this will be also recorded, so we'll stay here. This is data management plan is something, it's a document, formal document, that you will be required to attach to your project work. Where is a formal document that you develop at the start of your research, but it's a living document anyway. You can update until the end of the research, which outlines all the aspects of the data management. So what you will do during with your data during and after the project. And this is actually what happens in real life when you apply for research funding. Many of the funders require in advance a data management plan that is part of the evaluation of the work. Okay. Again, it's a vital step, and the data management plan should describe more or less carefully what research data you will be creating or collecting, who will be responsible for each aspect of the management plan that you are developing, which are the policies for funding, institutional, and legal, because you can have funding policies, you can have your organization policies, as we said, but you can have also legal constraints related to the kind of data that you manage, sensitive data, and so on. So there are several compliance dimensions: funding, institutional, and legal. How the data will be organized for the structures and file naming conventions, file version. How the data will be documented during the collection and the analysis phase of the research. Which are the data management practices in terms of backup, storage, access control, the different stakeholders of the work, archiving, and how the data will be stored and secured. What facilities and equipment will be required? Hard disk, backup, repository, etc. Who will have the ownership and the access right to the data? How data will be preserved and made available in the long term once the research is completed. And here you can find plenty of this, but if you go here, this is the biggest, most important research program in Europe. It's a program that just started in 2021 with coverage of 7 years and more than 100 billion euros. And the European Commission set up the guidelines for the data management. These guidelines are driven by the philosophy of open access, open innovation, knowledge sharing. So the research data should be fair in the sense that should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. This is exactly what we are saying. And here, these are the guidelines for the data management plan and data management in general. I can okay. Of course, as we said, the outputs are not only data and publications, but there are also other products, such as software code, workflows, methods, protocols, and so on. And there are many things that may be required in order to have, let's say, to handle the overall methodology. Okay. So you can find several, let's say, guidelines and hints for managing the research data. give a look to this this image and try to understand the difference between, let's say, an open approach, an open and transparent approach, and a closed and, let's say, blind approach. And here we enter also in the discussion about open source software and open source code. That you should have heard anyway. Of course, this is something, the openness, the transparency of the process. This is something that is really important also now, this period. Think about the experimentation that about vaccines. Where the data of the experimentations are available to the entire scientific community in order to allow what we call, say, a peer review of data. Of course, that can be done from scientists that have the needed knowledge and background for doing that. This is not an exercise that can be done by anyone. Okay, but the data of the experimentation are available. And indeed, you have plenty now of paper that examine from different perspectives, of course, the data. And we already mentioned this because, of course, the European Union adopt the fair data principle. So findable metadata data should be easy to find, both for humans and computers. Machine readable metadata are essential for automatic discovery of dataset and service. This means that, for example, we should be able to document data with XML standards, for example. XML is an X stands for extended markup language that is capable, according to specific taxonomies that are, let's say, topic oriented, to document the data, the information that are inside the file. Think about, for example, the XBRL, Extended Reported Business Language. That is a standard of the XML with specific taxonomies that are capable to document data that are coming from the financial reporting in a standard manner. That is just an example. Accessible. So once the user finds the required data, she needs to know how they can be accessed with the needed authorizations. Interoperable and reusable. You have several tools you can find and you can search for.
Yeah, the main emergence of more attention to the management of creation and tools like DFO are really useful. Now that there's much more attention to this, having a tool like DFO, which is really a series of prompts to get you to think through, as a reason to think through different do it. I think it's useful to have that structure. People are teachers to think through it, but thinking about it. Where are you? Who goes back? During the research, after the research, so then we get the digital thinking through its
So, which are the main contents of a data management plan? Of course, the administrative information, project funding bodies, investigators, data contacts, policies, and version. Okay. Then the way how data are collected, so data description, type, format, and volume, existing data sets. Also, if you use primary data or secondary data, so if you create the data yourself or you reuse data that are coming from your researchers, or you do both. Of course, you can do both. Method by which data will be collected or created, structures, naming, versioning system for folders and file, quality assurance processes. Documentation of data. And here you can find some examples of data documentation. If you work in a laboratory, usually in a laboratory, there are notebooks and or experimental protocols. Then you have questionnaires, code books, data dictionaries, software, information about equipment setting or calibration if you have instruments to be used. For example, here, at the other building, we have a chemistry laboratory that is used for doing analysis on the commodities, on the goods. Okay, so here they have instruments that have to be calibrated and they have protocols to be followed for methodology reports. And so if you use secondary data, for example, provenance information. Ethics. Copyrights. Data should be open data, but also data that are covered by data protection. So, for example, if you use one of the database companies, for sure you will have to mention that data are coming from there and that you re-elaborated them. And that you have the right to use them, because quite often these data are not for free if they come from this kind of database. So you need to demonstrate that at that time you had the right to use them. Storage and backup, security. So safety and security of data. The way how the data are selected and preserved, the way are shared, and the responsible and the resources. with other software requirements and so on. This is the table of contents of the data management plan. So try to do this activity. You are connected. You have to take this and move in the right folder.
A website where you can actually go there and just understand how to organize it, which is data management, right?
You already seen this. Okay, you can do it yourself. And this is a template for data management. This is another activity, and then we finished. So you can go ahead all alone until the end, and when in this way I can move to the other meeting. So see you tomorrow, 9:15 sharp, and enjoy with the activity.